I really loved as I'm walking through your book. I appreciated the story, especially with Polycarp, Blandina, a figure that I didn't know anything about historically. But you are seeing them. I mean, these are martyrs. These are people that are standing true for the faith in the midst of the public world at which they live. It seems far removed from our audience. They think this is not my world. It is more than you realize, because I think we have compromised a great deal. We like the idea of martyrdom in theory, but when we're faced with the everyday realities, this means you might lose a job. You might be without employment. You might be sued. You could be, you could be all over the evening news, or you might be all over bloggers talking about you online, or YouTube videos. People that are, you will be ostracized and canceled. That in some respect, they're dealing with the second century cancel culture that we're dealing with today. I mean, I hate to export terms onto that period of time, but I'm trying to get people to see that this is so applicable to the here and now where they're at. And this, I think it begs the question, how are we preparing people? And have we as a church, have we forsaken our responsibility of formation for the preservation of institution? And I think Dallas Willard talked about this. When a church removes itself from formation, it becomes the institutional preservation. And you even mentioned in the book later on in the end, when you're talking about, if you come from a seeker church background, which I don't hear that much anymore, but we still have the idea of what it means, where church is about, hey, everybody come here and find your best life kind of idea and find fulfillment. And we're not forming them, we're fooling ourselves.
Yeah. A couple things, like one, for example, in that Blandina account, that's the story I use in the next to last chapter. And I think I mentioned in the book, but as part of that account, they mention multiple people that capitulated, multiple people in the church that pinched incense to Caesar and walked out. Multiple people that were under the same pressures, but here's this woman who remains faithful to the end, and the community sort of holds her up as an example. And that's what the purpose of that text is. It's to be an example. It's to say, look, we recognize these things are hard. And here is a posture. And so the church, the very fact that the text is written demonstrates like the struggle that's going on. But that simultaneously, in like the second chapter, I say, catechesis and discipleship is cultural engagement. Like we have got to form people. Catechesis is cultural engagement. We often think everything is external, but when you look at the early church, they put such an emphasis on catechesis. I'll give you one example, and I think I only mentioned this sort of in passing in the book, but early church, they draw a distinction between the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8 and Paul on Mars Hill in Acts 17. What is the Ethiopian eunuch? He is reading Isaiah 53, and he looks at Philip and says, what do I need to do? Like, what do I need to do? And Philip says, and gives him the gospel. If you go to Paul's like beginning, how many gods are there? We've got to start at the beginning. I can't just say Jesus has a wonderful plan for your life. I mean, there's like a whole catechesis, a whole discipleship. And actually, Irenaeus, in one of his works, he mentions the challenge Paul has among the Gentiles who weren't already formed. And I see the same thing today. I mean, you can talk about, you can read some of those works, The Great Dechurching, or some of these works. We're quickly moving into a culture in which the very basics of Christian orthodoxy or formation are not even known or assumed. And suddenly, catechesis becomes a gateway into cultural engagement.